No, I look sleep deprived. I decided to put contacts in today because it was sunny outside and I wanted to wear sunglasses. So, welcome back to another video. I was going to do a react video, but I mean, my entire feed has been covered in people talking about abortion, and I don't know, I feel like I should chip in, but my opinion isn't going to be that enlightening because I haven't fully decided where I stand on it. I don't agree with late-term abortion because I believe that if a baby can live outside your body, that it probably does deserve to continue to live. But with before that, I completely don't agree with late-term abortion. I don't think that you should be able to kill or terminate rather a pregnancy past 20 weeks. But before that, I feel like a lot of people have a lot of different opinions. I've heard arguments from both sides. I've heard a lot of left-leaning sort of arguments. I've heard right-leaning arguments. I watched an entire lecture, or not really a lecture, but I've seen Ben Shapiro talk about it. And what was interesting to me is that he trophies himself as quite factual, but when it comes to abortions, he seems very emotional. A lot of the stuff he says is very emotionally driven. I think on the Rubin Report, he said something like, people don't feel good after they have abortions. And I was like, people don't feel good after doing a lot of things that they have to do, paying taxes, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but for the most part, I'm against late-term abortion. I think that isn't okay. I would never do it, and I would never advocate that someone else does it, because first of all, you're in the home stretch of pregnancy. You waited this long to decide you didn't want a baby. You can hold out for 3 more months, okay? And the other thing is, the baby can live by itself without you. So I feel like it's wrong that you should be able to do that. But with the whole early term, I don't know what you really call it, but abortion before late term abortion, I don't know how I feel. Personally speaking, I don't know if I would have the willpower to do it myself, but does that mean just because I couldn't do it that I should disable someone else from doing it, or make them unable to do it? I don't know. I think that it is a very difficult subject because there's no ways of not involving emotion into it, because this is first of all, it's someone's body. Second of all, it's, their potential child. There's a relationship dynamic. There's all these things. And I spent maybe the last 2 hours talking to my partner, Ed, my boyfriend, Ed, my current, love, and, someone who I could potentially get pregnant with, not saying anything about that. I'm not pregnant, but, someone that this occur with in terms of myself. And we really didn't reach a conclusion. I think it's a very personal thing, and I don't know. And that's why I would stay on the side of pro-choice, because if you don't believe that abortions are correct in any stage, I feel like you should, be able to not have an abortion. But just because you don't want to have one, does that mean that everyone else, every other woman who's put in that situation shouldn't be able to have one? I think the biggest sort of people on the side of, pro-life, or people who are against abortions, are sort of trophy this sanctity of life thing. And that's driven mainly by religion. And to be honest, religion doesn't have any place to claim sanctity of life. First of all, because most religious people believe in a second life. So, all those aborted babies are immediately going to heaven, right? You're creating a cesspool of people just going to heaven, unless you're Catholic, but they'll just spend their time in purgatory until they can climb to the top of that mountain in Dante's, work. But you're creating a huge number of people who are just going straight to heaven and no longer have the potential of becoming evil. So, there's sanctity of life for you. Also, I'm pretty sure God's kill count is bigger than everyone else's. He's a huge fan of smiting. He's destroyed many nations according to, the Bible, Old Testament mainly, and, according to the Quran. So he clearly doesn't value human life very much if he's made it possible to do that for himself. But in terms of the sanctity of life, like, I don't know. I've heard a lot of arguments. I've heard a lot of things that people have said. Some things just in passing. I saw a couple of tweets that were kind of like, my mother wasn't the most capable mother. They were addicted to drugs or whatever. Not me, but in this tweet. And, she chose not to abort us, and I couldn't have been happier for that because I have a life. And that made me really think. And I was like, okay, but there are so many mothers out there who completely, destroy the futures of their children. There are so many mothers out there who abuse their children. Me working in an educational background, I have to go over that, and it completely destroys me for like a whole week because I can't think of anything else. And it's difficult. It's difficult for me to be like, yes or no, because there's a lot of people make a lot of good points, and there's so many different angles to this argument. There's the whole religious and non-religious thing. There's the men and women thing. There's the dilemma of people being fit to be parents or not. Like, I feel like there are way too many people on this planet who just think that anyone who has a kid is capable of being a parent, when it's simply not true. We've had cases where parents, like blood-related parents, have raped, beaten, killed their children for whatever reason, abused them, neglected them. And a lot of people can say that maybe those children would have been better off if they weren't born. But then here's this one person who's saying that, I'm so glad that my neglectful mother, abusive mother, whatever, didn't abort me. Like, me coming from an abusive background, I've thought many times in the past, hundreds of times, I wish I wasn't born, because it would have taken away this suffering. And I definitely think that never being born, is certainly better than, dying at a later stage of your life because of some kind of abuse. I think that's, in my opinion, I'm not saying that, that's a monolith for everyone, but I think that. So, I don't know. And there's also the men and women issue. I've seen a lot of, women are the only one who can decide this. Women are the only ones, because women are the ones carrying the baby, and I don't disagree on that. I mean, I get it, and this is something I also spoke about with my boyfriend, that if hypothetically I got pregnant and you wanted to keep the baby, what would the conversation be, because I don't think that there's an easy answer to that. I think that people aren't allowing conversation because they just want everyone to assume that it's completely on the woman. But I understand that there are men out there who, if by a chance that they get someone pregnant, that they may not be completely comfortable with that baby being aborted. I understand that. And I also understand the stance of the woman that, oh, I'm the one who's, carrying this baby, it should be my choice. Completely get it, right? But because this issue is such a personal issue, it's such an individual by individual case issue. Me, for example, if my boyfriend had gotten me pregnant and he was ready, he said that, I know you don't want this baby, but I want this baby, there would be a conversation there to be had, because now, it took two people to make this baby. And even if there is just one person, even if it's just me carrying this baby, I feel like that the second party should have a voice, Also, you don't win battles by fighting them yourself. You kind of need a backing. So those women saying that women are the only ones who are allowed to talk about this are completely wrong, because people are allowed opinions. But getting back to the topic, if, for example, I had gotten pregnant by mistake and I didn't want this baby, I wanted to get an abortion, and my boyfriend wanted this baby, the conversation would then be, okay, well, I'm doing the heavy lifting here. Me as a woman, I'm the one carrying this baby. What are you prepared to do so that, I could, continue to carry this baby? Like, how do I feel like what I'm asking for is like a reparation. But what I'm saying is, like, what part of this are you going to what part of responsibility are you taking for this? Like, are you taking care of all of my needs and wants, all of my mood swings, all my bullshit while I'm pregnant? Like, I'm the one doing the maybe, like, if without him I'm doing 100%, but with him, because he wants the baby, I'm doing still doing 80% of the heavy lifting. So I'm not saying that women who are saying that if you don't have a uterus you don't get an opinion, I'm not saying that their opinion is invalid, but I do think that men should have some kind of say, at least on a personal level. Like, there should be some kind of conversation to be had. Because if it were me, if Ed offered to completely look after me in this time, I was completely cared for, we were going to train as parents. Even if I didn't want to be a parent, he was going to train to be a parent, read up on it, try to be, in some way responsible, or in most ways responsible. If I didn't want to be a parent at all, I would go through with it. I would go through with this pregnancy to term and then hand the baby to him. I'm not saying that's easy, but, and this is another thing. I feel like a lot of people are also saying, if you become pregnant, you should carry this baby to term and then give it up for adoption. I don't think it's that simple to just be like, I carried this baby to term and now I'm just gonna hand it over. Pregnancy is no joke. I'm the oldest of 6 siblings in my family. I personally witnessed 3 pregnancies and helped with 2. I could tell my mom was pregnant before she could tell. And it is no joke. There is a lot of things that go on. Your entire life changes. You become a different person. So it's definitely no joke to say that, you just do this 9-month life-changing, it's not even a course, it's completely you just essentially wolf out for 9 months. And in that wolfing out, in that morphing, you go through different stages of morphing, and you just change all the time, every time. You never know what's coming. Everything is different, everyone's experience is different. And then at the end of that, you get a baby that you're emotionally attached to because of your mommy hormones, and then you just ship that off to someone else. It's not as simple as that. Even if you commit to that early on, it's not as simple as that. So I don't think that is fair. When something is so tiny inside of you, when something is just sort of, it's not even a life yet. It's just a cluster of cells, especially at the beginning. and where most pregnancies fail anyway, most people lose their babies that quickly, you're not as attached as opposed to carrying this baby to term and then giving it away. And then there's also the rape victims argument. Ed saw a article by The Guardian, so I don't know how authentic it is, but he saw an article that said that in Arkansas, rapists can now sue their victims should their victims get an abortion, which is horrendous. But the whole rape victims argument about, you know, women should be allowed to abort their children, the children that are conceived out of rape, I think that's a really weak argument. First of all, because it's very, very rare that a rape victim will get pregnant. Not saying it doesn't happen, but it's certainly very rare. And also, you're limiting that to say that women who only go through a trauma should be able to abort children. Not children, you know, to have an abortion. And this is another thing. I struggle with the terminology. Like, is it a child? Is it not a child? It's such a complicated thing. We live in a completely different world to people who, like, from generations before us would say absolutely not, you know? Like, we don't have a need to further the human race at the minute. I'm not saying that that's a reason for everyone to get an abortion. I'm just saying, like, generations before us, we would have had a need to do that, where people were only living to 30. We would have a need to, you know, further our species. But at the minute, with the population as it is, we don't have a need for that, you know, especially to people who are incapable of raising, you know, decent, caring, empathetic human beings. And the other thing is, I don't know. I feel like we keep trying to make this a social issue, like something that everyone can just monolithically agree to, when really, if we come down to it, it's an extremely personal issue. It's an extremely personal choice. And that's kind of why I side with the pro-choice movement, because we're not saying that everyone has to get an abortion. If you don't believe in abortions, we're not saying you have to get one. But we are saying that women who, you know, think that they're not capable, or they're not ready, or, you know, they just don't want a child. It's as simple as that. They just don't want a child. Like, instead of raising that child in contempt, can have an abortion. And I don't, like I said, I'll reiterate, because I know how people are. I don't believe in late-term abortion. I feel like by that point, you've had enough time to think about it. I think by that point, it is sadistic for you to go into a hospital and be like, I don't want this kid anymore. You're in the home stretch, you gotta wait it out. But the beginning, I don't think, you know, it's serious. Like, I understand the gravity of it. I understand the arguments. I understand your sanctity of life stuff. But I also think that it's a lot more complicated than people just being like, oh, you just want to murder your kids. Like, I understand that it's more complicated than that. And personally, coming from a background of abuse, working with children who face abuse, who have mental health issues, who have disabilities, like, some people truly should not have kids. Some people truly should not be able to have kids. And I mean, I don't know how that can be solved. Some people are true monsters in this world, and, you know, they don't deserve to have children. And in some ways, I think that, you know, my non-existence, like if I had never been born, would have been better than me being born, because I wouldn't have had to suffer as much as I did. Having said that though, am I grateful for the fact that I have a life? I mean, yeah, of course I am. I'm not about to take it. I don't know. And then the other thing that I and my boyfriend talked about was adoption. And, you know, instead of having kids, if people just adopted people, we would have less of a population crisis, you know, around the world, everywhere. Like, but also adoption isn't being made easy for all those people who are saying that, oh, you can just put your kid up for adoption after it becomes born. It's not easy, you know. Those kind of programs are extremely underfunded. Fostering, adoption, those kinds of things are extremely underfunded. And it's really expensive. And it's difficult. You don't make good things like adoption. Like, I know people who have adopted kids and they struggle to adopt a child. And it's really not being, first of all, the stigma around not wanting to have your own children has not completely vanished. Like, people are still pressured and are obsessed with having their own children, like from their person. And second of all, adoption isn't being made easy. People have hang-ups about adoption or fostering. But that's kind of off the topic. And that's why, like, I can't decide on this. Like, I don't know where I stand, because it's such a complex issue, and I think everybody's situation is different, and everybody should be able to sort of hammer this out with their partner or with their family members, or, you know, whoever you seek counsel from. I don't really care who, but whoever you seek counsel from, I feel like you should be able to hammer this out, and you should have a choice. And that's what that's what I'm about. I'm all about choice. And I don't know. That is the end. That is the conclusion. The way I started is that I just don't know. I understand the people's stance about being like sanctity of life, and it is a huge stance. I'm not denying that. But just because people are allowed to get abortions does not mean that you have to get an abortion. And that is why I side more with pro-choice. That is my stance. And yeah. I've also had the argument that just because people ban abortions doesn't mean that abortions will stop. But I don't know. I mean, they won't, because women were having like back alley abortions, throwing themselves downstairs, going for vigorous riding, horseback riding and stuff like that to get rid of their kids, or not kids, but to basically abort their pregnancy. This way women are safer. But does that mean you should be able to abort your pregnancy just because women want to do it? Is that, you know, like I said, I don't know. I don't know. So that's like, I've given you a lot of arguments, and what I would encourage people to do is to just stop making arbitrary comments like men can't comment on this when they clearly can, and just think about it. Just think about the stances that people come up with, because like I said, it's not as simple as this is right or wrong. I think there's a lot of elements in it. I think there's a lot of time. You know, pregnancy is 9 months, so there's a lot of time that people consider when you can and can't have an abortion, when you should and shouldn't. And, you know, the gravity of being a parent and whether that should be a reason for people to have an abortion. I don't know. You know, it's complex. And I don't understand why people are sort of dumbing it down to simply this or that. I feel like there's a lot of room to argue, and a lot of things aren't being addressed properly because people are kind of just hanging up on these two avenues. But that is my stance, and to be honest, like I've been talking about this for 2 hours with Ed, and I haven't come to a conclusion. So feel free to debate down below. You know, I'm more than willing to listen to other people's stances. I'm more than willing to listen to different opinions. So, you know, tell me what you think. I genuinely want to know. Because before I had heard sort of the right-wing arguments, not like super far right-wing, but like some of the more conservative arguments, I was more or less like, yeah, abortions, people should be able to get abortions, pro-choice. But when you bring up things like life, like when life starts, and when an embryo can feel pain, when it smiles, when it has fingertips, whatever, like when you bring things like that in, it really makes you think. And you know, it's difficult. So please do share your arguments down below. Please tell me what you think. I am very flexible with this idea. I don't know where I fall. I don't know if I would be able to go through like a midterm abortion, like 6 months in. I don't think I could. I just would not have the willpower to like, people know how I feel about children already. I love children. Children are who I work with. I have raised children in my lifetime. I would not be able to do that. But just because I wouldn't be able to do it, does that mean somebody should have to carry a pregnancy to term? I don't know. But yeah, this is my video on what I think about abortion. Clearly, I think about it way too much. And tell me what you think. Thank you, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.